We are live, sir.
Yeah, so looks like we're back on episode 2, huh?
We're here. We made it. Actually, that was technically episode 3.
Episode 3.
But I mean, we did the first episode, part 1 and 2.
That's true. In other words, this is episode 3.
Yeah.
This is the first episode of the new year of 2024, though.
Correct.
Yeah, so.
Let's start it. What were your biggest takeaways or learning experiences from 2023?
Good question. Biggest takeaways and learning points from 2023. How you start doesn't matter. It's how you end, how you finish. Finish strong.
Give me an example.
I guess a practical example would be in terms of like fitness. So, Aquazi and I, Aquazi's a friend of mine. He's actually fortunate to be behind the cameras. So
Shout out. Let's hear you.
Shout out to Aquazi. Thanks for the wig. Yeah, we started working out at the beginning of the year. So, we're pretty strong in January, February.
Of 2023?
Yeah, 2023.
Okay.
And then we fizzled out, around March? April. We fizzled out in April. But even before we fizzled out in April, the quality of our workouts went down significantly. It was more about going to bagels, like getting bagels. We'd work out to socialize to get bagels. So it wasn't like really really focusing on the task at hand. So, but ultimately, I think we reconvened in October, middle of October, and we've been going quite strong after now. So now our training is very focused. We're really trying to like build a strong foundation, and it's pretty exciting to see. I think working out is. The reason why I brought that up is that something that's inconvenient, because if you think of 9 to 5 or working, you getting sore is not convenient. So, us breaking through that barrier and having some momentum going into the year is definitely something I'm excited about in terms of a practical sense of the example.
Now, with you, did you notice any difference of morning workouts, evening workouts? Did you find what works better for you? I know you were doing in the past a combination of both. Are you still doing that? Or are you morning we can always hit, evening could be sometimes a crapshoot?
With the variability of life, everything goes. So I can work out in the morning, the afternoon, or the evening is whatever is available. My goal is to have at least 4 to 5 workouts a week. I've been averaging 8 to 10, but yeah, it's been going well. Again, the 8 to 10 is just I guess an overcompensation of future alterations of life, because I know that when my new baby comes, probably going to be busy, so probably going to drop down to 3 to 4, so I'm trying to get it in now.
Okay. But with the 8 to 10 currently, do you feel like if, say, 2 months down the line when you have a new baby in your life and you can have the time, would you want to maintain 8 to 10?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
So you don't feel like the 8 to 10 is too much?
No,
so
not even close.
The only thing that's hindering is the continuous at 8 to 10 is just the time.
The variability of life, yeah.
But not in the sense of willpower or body fatigue. It's just
100%.
pure time. You're all in, love it, no question on that. It's just with life.
Yeah, and the only reason this is the case goes into the second takeaway of 2023, which is that if you want to go somewhere really quickly, go by yourself. If you want to go really, really far, go with people. So I don't do a single workout by myself. I don't remember the last time I've done a workout by myself.
Interesting. Now, do you think that's sustainable for the future?
Yes and no. Yes, because of the way I do it. I don't, Quasi, him, and another friend of ours, we actually work out 3 times a week. That's kind of consistent. And then all the other workouts outside of that. Friday now has been consistent, now going on 6 weeks. This Friday is going to be a 6 week. It's an former coworker of mine. He has a specific style of training that's very functional, and I like it. So that's it. And then now we're finding other people to fit into. Yourself being one of them. We have some
ad hoc people that you work out. So you have a basic template where it's 3 days a week I go here, and that's what you think is that's going to hopefully stay true for 100%. The foreseeable future. And then the other ad hoc workouts or your other buddy, those are just segmented in as you go.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
I think that's sustainable, yeah.
And yeah, so with that, definitely it's a means to socialize. So like rather than going out and having a beer with someone, going out to dinner, we just go work out. Yeah, so I think that's why it makes it sustainable. But yeah, those are kind of like the big two things I took away from 2023, just kind of surface level. I think as we continue our conversation, there's going to be more things that brought to light. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity too to kind of like share like what are some things you took away from 2023.
I guess the biggest thing I took away is to always be mindful and grateful for what you currently have, and don't always have the grass is greener approach with things.
Wow.
And just be mindful and be like, and before you make big decisions, whether it's relationships, career, friendships, just really make sure it's like, okay, like, how am I doing in this situation? Like, is it really bad, or am I just like self-sabotaging? The consistent thing, I'm currently reading a book. It's literally called like The Mountain Is You. It's all about self-sabotage.
Wow.
And I feel like this past year, I did have some life events that really threw me off, but who really threw me off was myself.
Wow.
Just how I handled those life events.
And why do you say that?
Because around the whole situation of life events happening, I lost sight of what I had around me. And so I was just selfish, self-sabotaging, like pity me, this, versus like, okay, I have people around me who love me and care for me and that are here to support me, so I have to be strong for them.
Yeah.
Versus me just like feeling sorry for myself.
Got it.
And then self-sabotaging even with like relationships, in the sense of like over-analyzing, overthinking it, because I'm hypercritical of myself. So I'm in therapy, and so my therapist, we talk about it, and something with relationships in a sense, because I'm a type of person, I'm very hypercritical of myself. I overanalyze, expect like a certain standard, and I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. And then with relationships, friendships, or intimate relationships, the same goes. And I have that same hypercritical mentality. And like I'm just like, as soon as I see somebody, I'm like thinking all these things, but that's not fair to them. I don't know them. Like I don't know what they're going through, because we all have different struggles.
Yes.
And so I think it comes to accepting myself more.
Yes.
But that's a tricky slope. It's a slippery slope, because like you could say self-acceptance, but you go have a binge.
Yeah.
And then be like, I accept myself.
100%.
So there's a slippery slope there, but I think if you're making like you're progressing, you're making positive movement, you gotta give yourself credit for that. So the biggest reflection is like, be grateful for what you do have. Don't always be looking for the next best thing.
Yes.
You know, that's with my personal life, like with business, like fitness, all that stuff. You always strive for better. You always want better. But some things, relationships, like connections with people, you can't. It's not. Sometimes like striving for better is actually just putting work where you're at.
100%.
And so that's something that I'm more mindful of, instead of just like assuming like, oh, this is broken and I'm just gonna go run to the next thing because that'll be better. I don't have that mentality. It's like, okay, if they're a good person and there's a connection there, we'll work on this. Or you're gonna work it through, like with friendships, intimate relationships, all that stuff. So that's the biggest thing I learned, is just be more mindful of that. Not everything can be wielded the same way. Like workouts, business, relationships, finances, all that is different.
Yes.
It's different tools. They all have similar
concepts and principles, but they're not.
No.
They're not to be executed in the same manner, or even the same thought process or execution.
No. Because like business, if you put your head to the grindstone and you work your ass off on it, and like you do, like it's a proven process. Like you do make certain steps, you'll get a result that you want.
Yes.
But in relationships, if you just try to put the work in, or try to do everything and just try to bulldoze it, or just be, like type A, like let's fix this, like, like, or just, trying to control it.
Yes.
Might get the opposite reaction. And then fitness is also similar. It's like a combination of both, I realize, because like if you go gas to the floor all the time, your body just malfunctions. But if you nurture your body, care for your body like you care for relationships, then it strives. But the same thing also goes for business. If you care for it, you keep up with it. So they all have similar ties, but they can't apply the same principles.
You can't.
And my thing is I struggle is like I apply, I'm like, everything is universal. It's like just work your ass off on it and just like be hypercritical and just keep improving. Like that's my mentality with everything.
Yeah.
And when I realized like that is not the mentality to have with everything.
Nor is it effective.
No.
Because if you consider rest, so let's say you're absolutely going all out in every area of your life, including rest. You're like, I have to do this. Like, to a certain degree, you're going to feel even a greater extent of burnout because you never really had a time to experience other hemispheres of your brain, number one. Number two, emotionally, you're overwhelmed because you're just putting more weight on the wagon. And, you know, your wheels are falling off and things of that nature. So it's like very important to and that was a very important realization in that you realize that they're not the same thing. But unfortunately, I'm sure you can attest to this in some of the examples of men that you've had in your life growing up that very much so embodied this whole idea of like just set in stone and having this one way, and they just carry that one way to everything. And there's a rigidness, there's a stubbornness, and there's a pride associated with that, which honestly is like the downfall to a lot of people. Like, you know, it causes them health problems, causes them, I call it cyclitic cycles. You know, that sounds like a very redundant word, but it's like, oh, fourth wife syndrome. It's like, well, you know, by the time you get to your fifth wife, maybe it's not the ladies that were crazy. Maybe you have a say in that and things of that nature. So, like, it's very interesting that you had that epitome so early on in life. But what I found super interesting that I wanted to ask you is, how do you think you can continue to build up on kind of the new life that you're setting for yourself in a way in which you don't forget the basics and not go back to overcomplicating things?
That's the tricky part, and that's something that it's not going to be an easy fix.
Yeah.
And that's something too that, again, we crave, like, okay, again, in business, like, this is a problem with the business.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the solution. It's off, you know, like, whatever, and it's done. You forget about it. But with like your relationship with yourself, with other people, emotions, it's not a cut and dry fix because everything's changing around you. Like, your emotions inside are changing around you, so they're always going to have to adapt and like reevaluate where you're at. One thing that I started doing is I have a journal.
Yes.
And I journal. I started this past April, and just life things I've learned. Honestly, most of it just selfishly is just relationship stuff I've learned, like just what girls need in a relationship, what I want in a relationship, but also what makes me happy, like what things, like, so if I'm in a depressed state or I'm in a bout of like a few months or weeks of sadness, what things help me get out of it, you know, like I know myself. So it's like, because when you get caught in those, whatever, it's a depressive like state or sad state or anxious state, which most people have experienced in the time, if you look back, like, okay, you were in that, and then you got out of it. So it's like, okay, let's look back and be like, what got me out of that?
Yes.
And so for me, I know if like I'm in a depressed or sad state, what gets me out of it is, okay, did I exercise today? Am I eating good meals today? Am I keeping promises to myself today? Am I reaching out to friends? That I have social connections? That for me is the biggest one that I always neglected.
Wow.
Was a social connection, because like I'd be my workout, because I had control over that. My workouts was good. I was eating well, sleeping well, like all that was good. But the social connections, because I was a lone wolf mentality, stubborn, or was like I could just do it myself. And so this is why doing this here, relationships that I fostered with you, and just being honest with you about like what's going on in my life, it's really changed the dynamic of where I'm going. Because like, again, I could be just like, if I'm not doing this, like, this is my off season, I'd probably be sad or depressed right now because not much is going on, I'm not getting much social interaction. So I know I have to manufacture that because I'm an entrepreneur. I have employees, but again, it's my off season, so I don't go in office. I'm on my own. So unless I do this, like make an effort for it, then I'm just going to be by myself and isolated.
Which is very interesting that you bring that up, isolation. So could you kind of paint a picture into, like, in your experience looking back in your life, like, how does isolation and depression marry with one another? Like, what's that relationship look like? And like, for if you were to talk to your younger self, what are some tips or some realizations that you've had, just kind of verbally run through that, if you would.
On just like getting out of depression, or
noticing like the relationship between isolation and depression. Like, could you swap
so
that?
my depression, the first time I ever experienced depression, it was actually due to physical illness.
Wow.
Which was my junior year of college. Up to that point, I never experienced bouts of sadness. I was lucky. I never wasn't in really intimate relationships, so no heartbreak, no depression, nothing.
Yes.
I was just like on not easy street, but like just mentally like no issues. And then junior year of college, I got my first like illness where my physical body like was like suffering, and that led into a depression. And then through that, because I physically, my body wasn't responding well. I was starting to get a little heavier, or just like didn't feel strong, and I just like was like had headaches, brain fog, all that, and I just felt like I couldn't be my full self. So I kind of distanced myself from people because I felt like I couldn't bring my best self forward. And honestly, at the time, I always had the lone wolf mentality. I'm just gonna deal with this myself. Like, didn't bring anyone in, didn't tell anybody about this. No one knew about it for years. And though, again, looking through the times where I got out of that was when I was interacting with good people.
Wow.
Not just interacting with people in general.
Specific on the
There's certain people.
And like, I'm sorry to cut you off, but when you talk about good people, what is about those particular people that you felt good in that lone wolf mentality that you you're able to like? What is it about them that drew you out of your shell? And like could you give some more substance to what that good means? Yeah.
So good, I'm not saying in the goodness sense of their character.
Okay. Fantastic.
So that's what I'm not saying, because like I was living at home. I was surrounded by great people, like good character people. I'm talking about people that give me hope and faith.
Wow. That
things can get better. That this like the suffering that I'm in this isn't normal. You know, like this at the time it was just my body physically wasn't there, but like it was just chaos with work.
Yes.
Like this is the first time I got into the business, and it was literally just chaotic. It was survival mode, and that was my normal. And like I saw no light out of the tunnel. Like this is how it is. Like it's just survival.
Yes.
And then by branching out of that, joining a men's group and being around other guys that are they're millionaires, but only working 3 to 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, some days not even working at all. Wow. I was like, it switched. Yeah. Like, okay, there's hope. Like it can get better. Yeah. And so when I was in those like years of just like survival mode with work, like depressed or anxious, like I would snap myself into thinking like, okay, this can get better. Like there's hope down the line. Yes. Don't get me wrong. I didn't see the hope because it was so far away. But again, it was on and off, in and out of it. But later on, the depression, because I knew it was possible, but it still would come. Yes. And it wasn't physically induced anymore. It was more, I guess, isolation again. Yes. But isolation because I wasn't isolated with people. Yes. Isolating, I guess, myself with like with purpose. Got you. So it's a weird thing because like I don't really have bouts of like really depression when I'm in the heat of when you're working a lot, whatever. I mean, I might just be like disassociative and not having feelings, which is probably a type of depression. But I think it's more so like not working towards something for me. Is where it comes again, because like I was living with somebody and she got me out of it at the time. Like we're not living together, but because she was just so encompassing and present. Yes. So like I didn't have bouts like I did then. Yes. And like she pulled me out of it. But I now realize, like, again, we talked about this last episode, like now I'm again by myself, not living with anybody, and it's starting to like rear its head back, you know? And I realize like I'm not creating. You know, I'm not doing anything. I'm being self-serving in the sense of like working on my business, like taking care of myself, but I'm not giving anything. Yes. You know, I'm not creating contribution, like none of that. Yeah. So I know I have to do something, and this is why this has been good for me too. Like finally, like okay, like share this, add value, like give back, like what I've learned is people don't have to like suffer this. But it's a weird thing because when I'm with you, it doesn't cross my mind. Yeah. You know, so there's certain people that like when I'm with them, it just
eradicates the. Yeah. Interesting.
And I know, and some people like, at least I know myself. Like I haven't been really down, but like when I'm really low, it's the last thing you want to do. But you got to do is reach out to somebody who take you out of it, just to distract you. Even if it's just to distract you.
100%.
But it's the last thing you want to do. You just want to be alone, sulk in it.
Yeah, don't do that.
You got to reach out. And it doesn't have to. You don't have to tell them what's going on. You just be like, hey, like, how's your day going? You know, and it could be a work friend. It could be like
a buddy, anything. Yeah, just call them. Get yourself out of it.
Anybody that could even distract you. You know, just get you out of your mental state and change your state. And so I don't necessarily. I know that now, but again, even if I see you every day, like there's still gonna be times I'm with myself.
Yeah, but to your point, I think one thing that people forget, like, you know, I think in America we have this society whereas you feel like you're a bother to people. But if you go anywhere else in the world, first of all, one thing you see is families live amongst each other. Like, you know, a good thing is like Indian culture. You see, like, it's very customary for the whole family to live in one house. Like, it's not weird to see everyone every day. Like, your good friends, you see them every day. Like, my dad talks to my mom's brother, who was his best friend before he married my mom, every single day. Even if it's 2 minutes, they talk to each other every day. Like, it's like it's a relationship. So like it's not like they don't have to update. They're not asking each other for something, but they talk to each other every day, and they don't feel like they're bothering each other. If he calls, he doesn't pick up. He calls him back. If you like, they just get in touch with each other because they understand the value of their brotherhood, of their friendship. But I find it very interesting how in America that's like that's a weird thing. You know, they have to label BFFFs. That's your best friend forever. But it's like, well, maybe they're not. Let's even assume like my dad and my uncle are not even that close, right? But they just have a relationship with one another, and they feel the need to update with one another. My dad's outside his sphere. My dad is not in the same kind of work he does, but yet my uncle will call and be like, "Oh man, they really destroyed me in the office today," and it's just like that getting the head off the gasket, because there's certain relationships that are super important. I say all that to say, going back to purpose that you mentioned, I find that in terms of like isolation, depression, a lot of people I think labor with this. It's like when you're working towards something, you have a purpose-driven life. It's interesting how it's very unlikely for you to be depressed, because if you have something you wake up to every day and you're like working towards. However, that working towards that something can be frustrating. So if you don't have people along the ways who aren't even necessarily in that same pursuit, but they can labor with you in terms of talking through it, or like they can just say something, just venting to them can give you a breakthrough to go through, and now you're able to go back on your track on that purpose-driven life. But unfortunately, if you're a lone wolf, even that good thing that you're working towards could be the very thing that spirals you into depression. So it's like this very interesting juxtaposition of human nature, where like we're constantly in war with our own selves. It's like, well, my relationship isn't going well. Well, it's my fault. Well, I'm not feeling good. Well, part of it is my fault. But like, although that is very a tough pill to swallow, because there could be external factors, like for example, trauma as a child. You got abused, you got hit, or something happened to you. You can always regress that and be like, well, part of the reason this all goes back to is because so and so hit me or so and so abused me. And don't get me wrong, like those things are extremely valid. But one thing I've found that's very interesting talking to my aunt, who's a psychiatrist, is that like every time she talks with her patients, ultimately, it's not how those other people could change, but it's how they themselves can deal with those other people. Because they like you're like, you know, the people are always going to be themselves, like, you know. So I think it's very important to have that, especially as you're going throughout this life. I say all that to say one thing that I definitely wanted to ask you a question about was faith. So before I ask you the question, just want to say like one realization I've had in my short stint in this world, 28 years as of yesterday, no brag, you know, but you know, your boy's 28. I found faith is the substance of things hoped for that are not seen, but if you consistently work towards it, they can be tangible. Again, faith is the substance of things hoped for. They're not tangible, but if you continue to work towards, they become a thing, if that makes any sense. And you mentioned about hope, and the interesting thing about faith and depression that I found is that hope is a common denominator. If you don't have hope, you're depressed. If you do have hope, you have faith, because you're still in the same crappy situation, but with hope, you have faith that things are going to get better. But without hope, you're depressed, and you have this understanding that I'm going to die in this situation, or you have this false realization that you're going to die in that narrative. But no matter how painful or how terrible what you're going to, it has an expiration date. Whether it's a day, whether it's a week, whether it's a month, whether it's a year, whether it's a decade, there is a time where that thing, you will overcome it if you're persistent and you have the faith towards it. Even if that thing is escaping success, is which we label what we're doing. So I just want to share that. But with that being said, what's your kind of like definition of faith, and like what has that looked like in your life?
I would actually, if we could hold that,
Yeah.
I'm curious with you. Have you ever had any bouts of depression in your life, or it could not even be
very good question.
The label as depressed, but just like, hey, like this is a time where I felt low or kind of lost in your life.
That's a good question, man. I would be completely honest. I would say I have a very different outlook in life, given the fact of how I was raised. And
We'll dive a little deeper into that.
Got it. Okay, cool. So I came to this country at 1 year old. My dad was 33 and my mom was like in her late 20s. They practically left everything. My mom had a supermarket in Nigeria. My dad, he made very good money as a customs officer. You get paid cash. You have a lot of good clientele, and it's just a very lucrative job. There's a lot of people who decided to stay. They own hotels now in Nigeria, and they're doing really well. Dad could have easily been one of those people. However, my dad decided to make the decision to leave that country because he realized that education is paramount. He took one economics class, changed his life forever. So his big thing is like education is power, which I believe in, 97% of the time. So when I kind of look back at my childhood, who my parents were in Nigeria, and then to come here, my mom was home with us. My dad started off working a job that was like $3.50 an hour. So, he had a really tough go at things. But we got here, I think, 97. And by 03, he bought his first multifamily house. Not even like a single family, he bought a multifamily. So it's like he already started building that generation of wealth off of nothing. Granted, monetary success and assets are not a segment of happiness. I say all that to say in terms of like, he could have easily been down in the dumps when he got here and be like, wow, well, U.S. Customs didn't accept me. It's over. But he put his hand to the pavement. He started building. And then a big thing that he always held as his mantra in life was that, like, if he's not at home, he's at work. If he's not at work or at home, he's at church. So, like, where to find him. Like, he's just a very simple person. And he always used to say, like, my best friends are my family. Like, I don't have, like, dudes that I'm just trying to go out with, drink beers and go to the strip club and stuff like that. So, I look at the house that he got as a byproduct, actually, of his heart posture, of where he was. My dad is a very God-fearing person, and by God-fearing, I mean that part of the reason that his life seems so constrained or so simple was that he has a very deep reverence for God, and that he understands that God is extremely merciful, in that, like, he grants us good health and all these things, and lets us have free will and things of that nature. But he also knows that God could wipe him away in a minute. So he tries to live a life that he is blameless before God. And even within that, he realizes that that's not possible. So that's where his faith kicks in, like, in hopes in a daily process that he's refined and becomes more like who God wants him to be. And it's interesting that you bring up about depression. The reason that I've never personally felt depression is because I've never lost hope in my life. So I've never been in a situation where I've lost hope. And I've been through things in my life, that would shake people's foundation. But hope has never been a thing that I've lost in my life. Now, has there been seasons where like I've had workless faith? Yes, because ultimately, I talked about the equation about faith and depression and hope in the center. So you can have faith and hope, but faith without work is dead. So no matter how much I have hope and faith and I'm working towards, no matter how much faith and hope I have, but I'm doing nothing, I'm not getting towards my goal. So like, I may be in the same kind of category as someone who's like depressed, but I'm not sad, but like, that's never happened. So, and then the second reason why I feel like I've yet to feel any depression, but I have felt disappointment in my life. So the disappointment that came out of my life again was through ventures. So track and field is something I held very high regard, I would say, in college.
Little backstory, that's where me and AD actually met for the first time.
Absolutely, yeah. So you were a shot putter at Watchung Hills.
Shot put and discus, yeah.
Yeah.
And you were at Pingree doing shot put disc as well, right?
100%.
And later did, well, go into your story.
Then I went into college and through at a D3 institution. So long story short, you walk into Bates, there's a wall with all Americans. I remember on my trip, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get my name on this wall pretty soon. And then, whoever it was that was leading me on my tour that time, like kind of like chuckled, was like, yeah, right, dude. Do you know how hard it is to get up there? But I was serious. Like my mom can attest to that. I'm someone of immense faith. Like I don't care how impossible something is. I'm like, I'm going to do it.
I love that.
Yeah. So long story short, my sophomore year, I became an All-American, placed fourth in the nation in the weight throw, an event that I actually learned, like I think technically like 11 months prior, and I was like fourth in the nation. So that was pretty good. My outdoor season of sophomore year, didn't get an All-American. I qualified for 2 events. So to be an All-American, you have to be top 8 place. I think I was like 10th and 16th. And then the following indoor season, I got an All-American again in the weight throw. Again, an event that's new to me. Bear in mind, discus, I've been doing now at this point 8 years. So I'm like, or 7 years. What is going on? Why am I not getting a breakthrough with this? My junior year was actually quite painful because I was the 2nd seeded discus thrower in the country. And it was raining. And in warm-ups, the week before, I set a personal record. I threw 10 feet farther. I threw 177 feet. And I was throwing it consistently because I had my technique down pat. But it was raining in nationals. I fell in warm-ups, and I could never mentally recover from it. And it was it was very frustrating because I understood the mental game, or I thought I understood the mental game. And I went on to throw like 41 meters, which is something I never even threw in freshman year. Like it was like disgusting. I was a 2nd seeded person. I think I placed like 19th or last national. So that was definitely a very painful encounter. And I'm not gonna lie, like I don't think I've ever been mad about anything to the extent I was mad at that. And I'm talking about anything, seriously. And then I followed that back up the following year indoors, and I didn't get All-American again. I didn't place in the event that I did sophomore, junior. So it was like double whammy, which is crazy. But then my senior year, outdoors, so indoors I didn't get the All-American indoors. But outdoors, qualified for shot and disc. Discus, first throw, decent. Wasn't going to take me to finals. You know about finals. So could you talk a little bit about that in terms of finals and track and field, like how that works?
Isn't like, so you place in the top 3 and then you go to the next round?
Yeah, like you have 3 throws, and if your 3 throws aren't far enough, you can't go to finals.
Yeah.
So, long story short, first throw would not get me to finals. Second throw, I foul. So I'm like, bro, I'm a senior right now. My friends are graduating, they're drinking, they're having a good time in college. I'm out here in Wisconsin with my coach trying to get this All-American outdoors. So, dude, like, I literally was like, I honestly remember this vividly. I went to the gate and I was like, Lord, just please help me. Get me out of my own heart. Get me out of my own mind. I've done this before. Just take control of this situation. So I just went in the circle, and I'm sure my coach was probably more scared than I was, because he was like, dude, this is gonna crush this guy. Because literally, I've been in college now for 4 years, and discus is my best event, and this throw is what takes me to get on the podium. throw the throw, and it's funny, on the throw, I just like relaxed towards the end, and it ended up being a 171-foot throw. So it was like probably my third best throw in college or something like that. And the relief that I felt, I literally had my hand up. I'm like, thank you, Jesus. Like, thank you, God, for like, thank you for not letting me go. Like, I was like, I didn't even know like what would happen at that point. And then to further do that, I ended up throwing further. So I went from 13th place to 3rd place. And then I ended up throwing 2 throws that were farther, but one other person passed me, who actually is now an Olympian, is in contention to be an Olympian. So that's how good these guys were throwing against were. But it was interesting because I was actually listening back to a podcast from that situation and hearing the perspective of the females coach. She had an athlete that actually basically almost won. She was a runner-up in an event that they didn't think she would score in. And she said that, what so-and-so did was super good, but she had 40 minutes to run that race. I think it was like a 10K or something. D-Ray, I mean, that's what I went by in college.
D-Ray?
They were like, he only had a few seconds to showcase what he got. And she was like, just seeing him happy after that third throw was like super breathtaking because, you really wanted him to win because he had to persevere. Literally, I had to persevere through it. And dude, I'll tell you, man, that was definitely one of the highlight moments of my life in terms of like just perseverance. Because, bro, so many people had quit the team and left, and I just stuck with it. I was like, you know what? The problem isn't the coaching staff; it's me. I'm the one who just decides to poop the bed.
But that's a mentality that most people, most even extremely gifted people, suffer with. I've seen so many people. It's a coach. It's the coach. It's always someone else. Yeah. But that mentality that, like, hey, you saw everyone else, the easy way would have been like, oh, it's the coaches. It would have been easy.
It was me.
It would have been easy, but you're like, no. At that, and again, you're a young man.
Yeah.
Most young men, you're naive, egotistical, and also the fact that in that moment, you had faith.
Yeah, big time, dude.
And I think that, just hearing that story and just hearing, like, your life in the sense of where your dad came from, where you came from, and why you've never been in those bouts of sadness or depression is because I think one thing, no matter what you've been through, it sounds like faith was always there.
100%.
And with faith is hope.
Yes.
And they're tied together.
Yeah.
But you also realize, like, faith and hope that's the key, but you're not going anywhere without action, which, again, you probably learned later on in life, but one thing that your dad instilled on you, it sounds like, is just the faith and hope.
Yeah.
Now, as a young man, did he come to you and say, and speak these things and be like, sit you down and be like, hey, AD, like, this is how I lead my life, this is what's helped me? Or he just was the example and you're just like, I'm just going to follow suit? Like, how did that
100%.
go through?
So it's both. So my dad is the real thing, but at the same time, he's in very much so the head of his household. So he worked really hard, but at the same time, even when he had 2 or 3 jobs, he would make a point in case. He taught me how to ride a bike. Even when he was sleep deprived and things of that nature. He actually developed type 2 diabetes, mainly because he wouldn't eat and he'd just have a large meal. Because he would have time and he'd just eat a ton and not eat for a while
and
again.
then probably go to sleep.
And then load up again. Exactly, sleep, because he'd crash, obviously. So he just definitely made a conscious decision to put us forth. And specifically, I think one thing that my dad always says is like, my whole goal is that you may know God, like how I know God, because it's so important for you to know that. Because I'm like, there's 2 types of people in life. There's a morally upstanding person who does everything right, and there's someone who's also morally upright and does everything right. But the difference between like me and that other morally upright person is I have God in my life, because ultimately just that understanding that there's so much more out there than me, and that like bathing in the Word of God and like what he would say is daily bread, because he wakes up every morning. He has the same schedule. He wakes up early in the morning. Every time I lock into his room, I see him scrolling on his phone. Now he has little glasses, so he puts his glasses on. He scrolls on his phone. He's reading the Bible, bro. He's reading the Bible because there's multiple things in the Bible in which that interesting enough, a lot of people say that they've read the Bible and things of that nature, but like when you meditate on it, when you read the Word, when you ask
really digest
for understanding, like, it's completely different. Like when you actually look at it like food. because if you think about food, like you can fast for 3, 4, 5 days, but it's interesting. People fast on the word, the Bible for years, decades, like their whole life they've had the equivalent of like those Oreos are like 100-calorie Oreos. Like imagine if your whole life you only had 100-calorie Oreos, you'd be dead. So a lot of people are spiritually dead because they don't feed themselves with the Word of God. So it's a lot of things that I even say that are actually scriptures, but like because I'm saying it, people won't know that they're actually scriptures. But like they've been an embodiment in my life.
And I think me personally, I've had moments in my life where I've had all facets like finances, fitness, relationships.
Yes.
But I still felt a lack.
Yes.
And going to the spirituality side of it, I think that's why so many people, successful people especially, I think they reach a pinnacle, they reach a certain like milestone,
Yes.
and they just assume that's going to bring them all their happiness.
Yes.
But I'm not saying all of them, but some of them, they don't have the spiritual foundation, or they don't have, I guess, the connection to a higher power. Whatever. Again, you're Christian.
Yeah.
I'm kind of Christian Catholic.
Yeah.
My roots are Catholic, so like that's just my familiarity.
Yes.
But I believe in a higher power, and I'm still finding my way with that.
Of course, yeah.
But I think people in today's generation, there's starting to be a shift back. But because there's a big movement of atheists for a while.
Yes.
And then even a lot of the atheists now are like, there's more here.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
And I think there's so many things in life. If you take the lenses off and you really look, it's like, you know, and I think it's also like a thing that makes you feel like you're not alone.
Yes.
Because even when going way back to your point of there's two types of, I think isolation, or you can either like
it's like different. Faith and depression and hope, or two types of isolation. Yeah, I remember what you're talking about.
Isolation where you sense like isolating and working.
Yes.
And then isolating, working, but being with other people.
Yes.
And so I never had an issue with isolating and working and moving towards something. That's never been an issue in my life. 'Cause, like, that's what always confused me. I'm like, hey, I have goals. I'm not like just sitting around on the couch. Like I was never a person that like, maybe my whole life had, besides being sick, maybe 2 or 3 days up in my 20s that I actually like sat and did nothing all day.
Yeah.
Like I'm always doing something. So it always confused me because like I'm like, I have goals. I'm moving towards something. Why am I still not fulfilled or empty? And I think it was two-part. It was the spirituality, like not having that, but also not having the relationships.
100%.
And I just assumed that if someone's not with me working on the same thing,
Yes.
I can't express it to them.
100%.
And honestly, I couldn't really express it to them a lot of my friends that I was with at the time,
Yes.
because we grew apart, different lives, and I was an entrepreneur, so it was a lot of lone wolf anyway.
Oh, of course.
So I didn't have the team or anything. It was just kind of by myself. But that's when you came into my life, and we are so open and honest with each other.
Yeah.
I've never,
experienced a relationship like that where it's like, wow, dude, like we're 0 to 100 really quickly all the time.
I tell you, like you guys, I literally like.
And you know I don't judge you. Like no. I'm like it's like every time you tell me something, I'm like I already knew, but I still love you anyway. Yeah. Like it's not like I'm gonna beat you up. Like,
but if you ask me something, you'll get the truth.
100%.
Even though it's not like probably like what you would advise,
but that's the thing. But that's the free will, like right? Because like it's terrible for me to say that I'm your friend and I love you, but my whole relationship with you is me punching you in the face and like grabbing your head and be like, no, dude, you gotta look at it that way. Like,
and I wouldn't want to tell you anything.
100%.
Because if I tell you, it'd be like, I told you not to do that. I told you, like, come on, Tom, like you're better than that. But if I'm like, hey, 80, like, I know you said this, but I did this,
and I got burnt.
Yeah.
But like,
and you're like, hey, I could have saved you 3 months of pain, but
yeah, man, like I still love you anyway, bro.
Well, you were right, And I think that also the thing is realizing the ego. That's something that I realized, like unintentionally, that I never was super egotistical.
Yeah.
But when my ego was the highest, that's when I was the most vulnerable. And that's when.
Interesting.
Yes.
Speak to that. Like that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Break that down, bro.
Because my ego was the highest right before I got sick. That was in like March and April. And my ego was like, I could get any girl I want.
Wow.
I'm gonna be super successful with business. Like I've proven that. I want to be financially successful. My fitness, all that. And I was just like feeling myself on top of the world. not that I'm always open to outside input, but I was like, I got this. Like, we're good, you know?
I need nothing.
I need nothing.
I lack for nothing.
No, and I kind of had a connection with the, like, spiritual connection, and, like, I found that again, like, just when we were started to talk together, so I was like, things are working, you know? Like, I'm feeling good, like, I'm riding high, like, you know, I made great decisions, like, everything's going well, and, like, ego was fueled, like, you know?
Yeah.
And then I got tested, and I realized in the moment when I got tested, ego went out the door, and I then, like, I crumbled because I was just riding ego, and when I lost, like, just not even everything, but just lost some things.
Yes.
Like, because I was so, my image and everything was so built up around, like, that ego.
Interesting.
That when I lost, like, a leg on the chair, I went right to the dark place. I was like, I want to die.
You didn't even fall on the ground. You went like to the basement, under the ground.
Yep, I went to the floor, but then I took myself under. You know, like,
interesting. So
I took myself further.
But then you were like, nah, like, really,
let's go all the way.
Yeah.
Like, because like I was so caught up in my physical image, like feeling good. Like I'm so caught up in the moment of like, do I like active, strong, like feeling good, and that's why I lost.
Wow.
And so I was on the floor, but I wasn't in the basement, you know, because I still had good people around me.
Yes.
I still had, luckily, financial like support. So like those other things were okay. But I guess the spiritual side also kind of went too, because I lost faith. Because I was ego.
You didn't need faith, because at that point you're like, I got everything.
Well. Yeah, I was going well.
It's like literally your body tested. You're like, when you were good, you're like, I don't need God because everything works. Everything I got is good.
Yeah, I'm making all right decisions. Like,
which is the dangerous thing about money, because interesting thing about money, you know, they like the good word always says pride comes before the fall. You know, even God said, money answereth all things. Like, even in that sick state, you can pump yourself with enough drugs that you feel nothing. You may be dying for real, but like you feel nothing. Like, money answereth all things. And I even brought up on the leaf, I forgot who said it, but money is the only thing that can act like God until death. Because literally as soon as you die, then it's like, oh, now God's like, oh, so what's up, dude? Like,
because I was laying on the hospital bed and like, you think I cared how much money I had?
It didn't matter.
It didn't matter. All I wanted to do
to get better,
or die. Like, that was it. And that's where I took myself in the basement, because I didn't have faith. I lost faith because like I was so consumed with the ego of like being healthy, being strong.
Actually wanted to die. I
wanted to die.
What changed? When did that flip switch and you did not want to die anymore?
Honestly, it didn't change for a while. Like I was asking for it when I was in the hospital, like praying actually, like, okay, take me out, like this is good, because I was just ego in a sense, like I don't feel good, like pity me, like I don't feel good, versus like I lost hindsight, like, oh, wait, if I do die now, this will kill my parents. Like, my mom would be devastated. Like, she, like, not even just like the business side of things, like she would be ruined. But I was just like consumed about me, like, pew me, like I'm in pain. I'm like physically struggling. This is awful. Like, end it. Like, you know.
Wow.
So I was just self-consumed, ego, and I took myself to that there. And then out of that, I guess when I started to like realize, like, for the first time, like, I heard people I work with or our clients or our managers, like, your dad was, like, they're like, 'cause my dad's not really an emotional guy, but like, I was talking to vendors and they'd be like, yeah, your dad wasn't well, like, he was so worried about you. And like, my dad didn't really show it when he came to see me, like, he kind of showed it a little bit, but just hearing it was like repetitive, like, yeah, your dad, like, just everybody, it was just like, your dad was not well, like, all that. And I was like, oh shit, like, this is not just about me. Like, I have people in my life that care for me. Like, you came to the hospital, like, you know, like, and also testament to our friendship, like, you were there, like, you know, like, those things, like, prayed with me, like, you know, you were there to support me. And I guess realizing that, and like, okay, I did get better, you know, things got better. It was a test.
Yes.
And I failed. I honestly failed, because I lost faith. But now, what can I do now?
100%.
And then when I got tested again with breaking my neck, the immediate reaction wasn't like, pity me.
Yes.
It's like, I'm lucky I'm not paralyzed. I'm lucky I'm alive. So it was a different framework in that sense.
Yeah. But could you talk me through what it was like reaching out to friends? Like, because I know you didn't talk to me for a while about what happened. Like, what was your thought process? You said some things changed, but why don't you reach out? What happened? I'm just curious. Like,
with what?
Like when the neck happened. Like what was going through your mind? Like, because I think that's very important because I feel like that has probably changed as well. Like when the neck thing happened,
you wouldn't have even known about the bacteria if you didn't call me that day.
Yeah.
Because I didn't reach out.
And I was literally like down
the
the road.
right, yeah.
I was down the road.
Yeah. I even tell my friends.
I was
my
a
mom
minute and a half away,
yeah.
like the whole time.
I think when I don't feel well, again, going back to ego,
yes.
I don't, not that I don't want people to see it, but like, I just want to suffer alone. I don't want people to come into the suffering.
You don't want anyone to pity you too, probably.
And no, I don't want any pity. Like, I want to be alone as like, that's what goes into depression, because like, I want to be alone. I don't want to bring anybody into this suck pit. You know, like, I want people to be like, hey.
Push it away.
Yeah, and like, I think that's also something I realized, like, with like people pleasing, a common trait I have is like, I don't upset people.
Yeah.
Which sometimes it might not, a long-term thing might not be good for people you actually care about. You might actually have to upset them
100%.
initially, which I realized with intimate relationships, you might have to upset them initially before it becomes a 1,000,000 paper cuts 100%. And it just leads to the nuclear bomb.
100%.
Which I now realize, like, okay, upset them in a moment. They might be upset, but again, this goes to this other thing I just went through where I had to upset her and like, or upset that person, you know, and I didn't want to do it, but I had to do it because it wasn't fair to her, and I could have just like kicked the log down and then the nuclear bomb would have dropped.
Literally, and that would have been worse.
It would have been so much worse.
So going back to upset people, do you feel like when you're not feeling or things are not going your way, and you don't want to share that with friends or loved ones, is that because you don't want to upset yourself too?
It's not necessarily upset myself. I don't want them to come into like, I don't want them to feel what I guess.
You don't want them to have empathy on you and feel bad because they love you.
Yeah.
You want their life to go on merry.
I want them to feel good.
Great.
I want no one to experience the pain I feel. Like that's like my goal is like, I would do if you call me and you're like, yo Tom, like I'm like super depressed, I'll be like, yo AD, like we're going to the gym, like we're doing. I'm like, I'll take anything.
But you now, you're like you don't want. Is it that you don't want to lose the credibility of you being able to take people out? Because I'm really trying to understand what's going on here. So you mentioned like if I wasn't feeling well and I reach out to you, you would drop everything you're doing to help me to get me out of there.
Without question.
But when you're not doing well, you'd want to suffer in that. Is it that you don't want to lose the credibility or your ability to get me out of things in the future? Because you feel like if you showed a vulnerable side of yourself, like you'd lose credibility before me?
That's interesting. I never posed that. It's like unconsciously I'm probably thinking that. Because like I think I always want to be that person that like, okay, Tom's always in shape. Tom's always like got his shit together. Like, you know, I always wanted that like model. And I like that. Like, it's like the ego again.
Yes.
I like he's always like, he's
on point.
Yeah,
like,
he's good.
Militant. Like,
he's doing it. You know, he'd be in the gym in the morning. You know where he's going to be. Like, you know, he's going to be in bed at night. He's like, you know, and that part of me, the ego feeds that.
Yeah.
But I think it also is like, I think I know if like people get sick.
Yeah.
And like you say if a loved one, for example, has like cancer.
Yeah.
That people around them suffer too.
100%. Yeah.
So I don't think I want to bring people into suffering.
I see what you mean.
Yeah. But I think unconsciously also I don't want to be vulnerable and be like, hey, I'm I'm hurting right now. I'm literally on death's door, dude. Feel like I should have just said, hey, I reach out and just like I hope like because I go like all is well. But I think it's more so that I don't want people to suffer.
Yes.
Of the thought of me hurting.
Do you know what's so interesting about that thought pattern? Interesting enough, you know, like if there was a devil, I would say that's what the devil would be doing. And I'll explain to you why, right? So
he's real.
Okay, so we've got the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, he's real.
So I really think the reason why I say that is like there might be someone who's watching this is skeptical, but I was like, well, okay, I believe that what the devil does is like, again, that thought of like, oh, I don't want to inconvenience him, all that stuff. Because the very thing of inconveniencing us could be the thing that actually gets you out of what you're going through.
It goes back to faith and hope.
100%. Because if there's no hope, because we're relational.
Because at that moment I had no hope.
That's why you wanted to die.
And I didn't want to bring you in.
But if you have hope, you don't want to die, and you act like, you ever heard a doctor say like he's fighting for his life? There's people who are not fighting for their life. They're literally just like, dude, like just something like me right now.
And that's the second time in my life where I had those thoughts of
Yes.
no faith and hope.
So, looking at our relationship now, what are things that I should do, or what are things that I can do better of, or articulate better that would make you feel comfortable to come to me, knowing that I'm not going to feel inconvenient. Like, what can I do to do that, to help you?
You vocalized this before,
Yeah.
but we're both in situations like, yo, why didn't you tell me?
And it's not negative context.
No.
I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that there's nothing that.
No, and that's the thing. I think it's just like my programming. It's not even like, because you voiced it. You're like, yo, like you let me know like week 7 or 8 that you broke your neck. Like, only reason why you like the hospital is because you called me. So it's programming, because I think so much. Again, going to the working in isolation without bringing people in. I adopted some part in college, this lone wolf mentality, and wore it as like a badge.
Yeah.
Like, I got this. I don't need anybody. It's all me.
100%.
And I think going through like hard things, like all those experiences, my default is to go through that. And even bringing like people in with like intimate relationships and like letting them know what's going on, or like parents or friendships. But I guess through therapy, through our friendship, I've been more open. Also it's like tough. It's like,
it's a process, right?
it is.
You have a defense mechanism that you've set in place, and you've
The
doubled
wall's
down
up.
on it.
I built the
not
bricks.
only- exactly, you built the bricks. You have landmines around it. There's so many things to protect it, and then you're doing a really good job of not spending time with yourself to also start to deconstruct that on your own. So, granted, in this conversation, we may chip away a couple bricks. I can throw a grenade, but like a lot of the grunt work that needs to be done, unfortunately, I'd say, is on your own. Like, literally, you have to be, and on your own could literally even be in a room in my house. Like, you can literally stay in my house for a week and be deconstructing the things by yourself, because you're actively pressing into those things. And just want to let you know that offer's on the table, by the way.
And I know you're serious. I appreciate that.
But that's what it really is, because if you really think about it, right? Our mind is a battlefield. All throughout the day, there's things entering your mind. Even if you don't want juice and you don't want pizza and you don't want all these things, there's going to be some times where you're like, wow, where did that come from? Like, I don't want that. Why is that in my mind? Like, you know what I mean? So like now, when you consider like a fortified landmine defense mechanism that you know fully well is not operating in a way in which it can help you,
it doesn't serve me anymore.
in order for you to deconstruct that takes a lot, because you're going to have to kill a thing. You're going to have to kill a character. You have to kill a character you made up, a facade that you made up, which in many ways like is scary, because a lot of uncertainty after that. And then if there's not a lot of uncertainty, there's this innate human nature for us to build up another facade, another character. So that's why the time spent on your own is super important, because now you can come to these agreements. And the reason why I talk about this is that this is obviously something that I've gone through by myself, because a lot of highly driven, successful, motivated people, one thing, and I don't like to throw out terms like this, but I only throw this out because you mentioned you disassociate. So disassociation is another fancy way of saying super intelligent, you understand you don't like to do certain amount of things, and there's certain things in your life that you really don't want to pay attention to. So what you do now is you create a perfect thing to take your mind off of it. You put blinders on, in other words. So successful people have this ability to dissociate in very extreme levels. Like extreme levels. Like David Goggins, case in point, ran like 100 miles with a broken, fractured foot. It's like his ability to just associate and understand that, like, you know, like that literally create another character and go to another place is like ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. But that, unfortunately, when you consider relationships, it's not helpful, because in that dissociative state, you're rash, you're brash, you're not patient, you're not handling your loved ones with tenderness, kindness, gentleness. You kind of start to battle with people too that are actually going against your goal. So, case in point could be my mom, for example. Like I'm trying to focus on losing weight. Obviously, we know that science proves that weightlifting helps you lose weight. Weightlifting, resistance training, not only is the only anti-aging, is the best way to combat
build
fat,
muscle and lose fat,
speed your
metabolism,
have a better metabolism, things of that nature. So when she makes an off remark of like, oh, I thought you said you wanted to be losing weight, why are you lifting heavy weights? It's just going to make you fat again, right? So obviously that's like, a simplified example, but it's very easy for someone to hear that and be like, well, mom's supposed to love me, she doesn't, and just blow up on the phone with them and curse them out, right? Because again, you're in that dissociative state and you're like, no, this is what I have to do. I've committed to 2 years of weight training to get my goal, and this person is a complete enemy to that, so I must eliminate them. And that's a very dangerous place to be. And the only way to deconstruct that again is through self-reflection. Self-reflection, but specifically self-reflection, I would say when you meditate on the Word of God. Because, again, it's very easy for you to be confused in your own feelings. So I look at the Bible as a manual, right? So it's like, well, if I have a creator and I'm a creation and I have any questions, I probably should go to the manual to understand what's going on with me. But what's so interesting about the Bible is people look at it as just fables and stories and all that stuff. But it's like, well, what about people who get shot 9 times in the chest and they don't die? Is that fake or is that real? Like, if you just look at it, case in point, and just understand what's going on, in terms of like, all right, wow, what really happened here in the story? Story of Job, case in point, lost everything, literally lost everything, and his wife was like, just curse God and die, dude. But honey, why are you telling me to curse God and die? Like, why? Like, how is that going to help the situation? So he didn't, but he asked God why. Like, God, why? Why? Like, he was disappointed with God. And God literally came at him, was like, when the bear goes in the woods and gives birth to a child, who tends to the child? When there's flowers out in the field, who clothes them? Who feeds the bird in the air? God just goes on and just gives him a lot of open-ended questions. And the open-ended questions are literally showing Job, like, I'm sovereign. I'm above all things. If I'm taking care of all these other things, you think I don't care about you? And it's like in our life, sometimes we kind of have to have that reality check. Or not sometimes, we have to have that reality check. Because unfortunately, I feel like human beings are more like Satan than God. Because we hunger for power, we hunger for wealth, we hunger for self-importance. But ultimately, bring yourself to a low, meek place. And meek, all that means is a fancy word of saying having the power to do something and deciding not to do it. It's super powerful. And within that meekness and humility, it's very interesting how God will really elevate a man or a woman that stays in a low and humble place. Literally, like a low and humble place. Like having the power to curse people out, but you decide to love on them rather. Someone is going down the wrong path. Rather than just punching them in the face or like cursing them out, you stick with them. Even if you know that they're going to go into a landmine and it's going to blow up your calendar, you continue to stay with them because you are literally their keeper in a way. So I think in many regards, that's like super important. So sorry to go on that tangent, but like I really felt like that's something that needed to be said.
No, and it's you really hit home with the disassociation, because that was my default up until I got sick these last 2 times.
It's like, boom.
And that's literally it. And that's the hardest thing I'm sitting with is I felt emotions these last 3 months more than I have in the last 27 years. I've cried more in the last 3 months than I have in the last 26 years. Like, so, because my default was the disassociation. I'm great at that.
Yeah.
Like, and that's but it's tough because it's a double-edged sword. Because it does get results, because you can disassociate and just head to grindstone and just work.
Yeah.
But like you said, we can't do that with everything. It also, I now realize that's not a place I want to live.
Yeah.
That's not a place. Like, I'd rather not have as much money or whatever, quote unquote, success.
Yeah.
If I don't have the people around me who I want.
100%.
So again, talking about relationships, finance, business, all that has different like ebbs and flows and like be tendered at differently, because the disassociation from a business / finance standpoint it's excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, it works.
In fact, it's almost as if the environment is created for that.
Promotes it.
This is a corporate setting. Like, you know, like, i.e., as soon as you're walking through the door, don't have emotions.
Yeah, like it's literally like that's the truth. My truth is the disassociation with work that you're not passionate about.
Wow.
Is critical. It's almost needed. Kind of. But I'm now seeing if you are actually passionate about it, you don't need to disassociate.
To the next level. Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
need that because then you have like you're interested. You want to do this. You're contributing, connecting, creating. Like you're doing things with it versus just like I'm just gonna make this business best as possible, make as much money as possible. Versus like, and then you have to disassociate.
Yeah.
Because like you're just self-serving and you're just like you're chasing a monetary goal or like a accolade versus like you're connecting, giving, creating. Like so.
Feeling.
Feeling. And like I said, I didn't feel.
Yeah.
I felt like I didn't feel at all. I did feel, but I didn't really feel.
Interesting.
And those two experiences, honestly, not good feelings came. If I'm being transparent, like not good feelings, but I now realize like I'd rather have feelings. You know, I'd rather I think it's better to not be numb and disassociate and have feelings and connection because. I mean, I haven't got many highs recently, just to be honest.
Yet.
But I know, like, with lows come highs.
Yes.
And actually, this past weekend, I worked out with a buddy yesterday, and somehow it turned into us driving in a snowstorm to a comedy show last night.
Wow.
And I would have never done that.
Wow.
Tom last year wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
It's like, I have to get my
so
sleep.
Rigid. You're
I have
rigid.
to, like, get my sleep. I get my workout in.
Yes.
I have to do work that day. Like, it's going to throw me off my routine schedule, like the perfect person I want to be.
Yeah.
Versus, I had a great time, and I guess also my own like proud moment is like in those situations we were out, and I usually feel a need to drink alcohol, and I don't want to, but I feel like a need to. It's like for social situations, but
social pressures.
Social pressures are just feeling uncomfortable. But I didn't, and I stayed up to 2 a.m.
And you were comfortable in your own skin.
I was comfortable, and I was having good conversations. Actually, I wasn't just self-serving. Like I want to feel good and get drunk or get buzzed and like feel comfortable in situations. Like no, it's like I'm gonna sit here, chill back, and like it's weird how I realize the energy you perceive. Because like again, I know we went to like whatever like we went to a comedy show. Then after like someone had
after party
like a thing, and it was people like probably 4 or 5 years younger than me that I went to high school with. And I got kind of them, but I really don't know them, But so I'm just like chilling there. I have like a seltzer in my hand, like I'm not going my way, and like they just start coming.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, like hey, like I used to lifeguard for you, or I loved your dad, like
100%.
And like I'm just here. I'm not
existing. I'm
just existing, giving off good energy. I'm like challenging myself. I feel comfortable.
And you didn't need alcohol.
I didn't need alcohol, and people came up to me and like I talked to one guy for like 20 minutes. I built a better connection with the guy. I went like. I was just like sitting there, like super present.
People were gravitating around,
and they were just like they felt my energy, and they're just coming towards me. I didn't feel uncomfortable on my skin. Like I was just like, I'm just gonna be here.
And there's so much more, man. There's so much more because I know you mentioned in high school that was something you always noticed. You're like, hey man, like people kind of just gravitate around you, and it's funny. The more you hang around with someone, that you actually start to pick up things from them that you don't even understand. Like you don't even know. Because we've spent hours together at this point. Like granted, we could spend a lot more time with each other. But like what's so interesting about what you said was like, bro, you were like, bro, I didn't need to drink. I could feel comfortable in my own skin. And that is super powerful. Like it really is. And it is the beginning of a very interesting journey. And I'm very excited for you. So with that being said, I want you to end up with last points while we round up this episode. I think we're running up on time, so wrap up this episode.
Last points on what?
On anything. Just wrap us up. I broke the third wall. In drama, they said you should not acknowledge the camera, but I just did.
Right.
So wrap us up.
Wrap us up. I guess going into the depression side, just for our listeners that are listening, because it doesn't go away. I hope it does for you. And at times it might go away, and people have different baselines.
Yes.
Like just from a genetic standpoint, like people sometimes like might never experience it, even if the worst situations, or might experience it all the time.
Yeah.
Or might, like me, I never experienced it, and then I now experience it more, not often, but like I once that cat was out of the bag, like, oh, this is something new.
Mm-hmm.
I would advise our listeners to seek help, whether that's therapy, just talking to somebody, like realize you're not alone in this, and there are people in your life that care about you. Because honestly, just being totally transparent, I would have off myself many a time if I didn't consider how this would affect other people.
Yes.
So when you're in that dark moment, you're super. It's honestly, you're selfish. You're concerned about yourself. You're only depressed because you're thinking about yourself, how awful your situation or whatever sadness. So I'd say before you do anything, take a step back and be like, okay, how does this affect other people around me? Reach out to a friend, somebody trusted, anybody. Consult with them. Then maybe seek a therapist, counselor, whatever works for you. Also, get out of yourself. Change your state. Change your state. Like, get out of the house. Go for a walk. Hopefully, you have a dog. Go take the dog for a walk. Like, go to the gym. Like, go to the park. Just get out of your environment. Like, that's the first step. Is change your. Tony Robbins talks about change your state. So if like you're like depressed, sad, whatever, and you're laying in a dark room on your couch or on your bed, and you're like,
it's not gonna help.
You gotta get out. It's the last thing you want to do. But first thing, change your state. Then reach out to somebody. And next step is really consider the people around you, because it's not about you. It is about you, but it's really not about you. And as humans, we will do more for others than we do for ourselves. So think about the other people and reach out, talk to somebody, seek help. There's a lot of options, but you're not alone. We all experience it. Not everyone, but a lot of people do. And as I'm realizing, as I speak to people, even my friends that I've known for a while, just being honest, I'm sharing my story, and like literally yesterday, one of the guys told me a story. I was like, oh crap! Like I thought, like mine's not great, but like yours, like I was like, geez, I was like, whoa.
That's why it's very important for you to share.
And so I think we grew deeper there because he's because he probably felt like he was alone. Because most guys, we're guys. Like we don't want to talk about that stuff. It's just all about like we're just like man up, do the thing, and like hey, there's a time for that. You got to man up and do some hard stuff. But you also got to realize if you're not being your best self, you can't man up. So you got
100%.
So that's where it's a double-edged sword. You do got to man up and do hard shit. But if you're not your best self, you can't operate and help those people around you. So that's my main thing: is get out of your state, whatever it is, move your body, change your environment, talk to a friend, counselor, maybe get therapy, and then go from there.
Cry out to God. Literally.
Yeah, or even
cry out too as well. I'm saying all of the above.
I've done that, and something I've been doing recently.
And has he ever not answered?
That's the thing. It's always, but you also got to realize it's not an immediate answer.
Of course,
because like you'd be like, yo, like you'd be like crying out like this.
But I'm saying he does answer.
And
it's not like at that very moment. It's just
it's not like you see the light
is gonna open. You know, maybe. No, literally.
Yeah, good. But
see, that's faith right there.
Yeah, and that's something we'll talk later. And something I want to work on is the faith. That you have, because I think that is a superpower.
Of course.
But
we appreciate you listening in today. We'll get deeper another day. All right. Cool.